I think he really wants to make Washington something. He wants to make Washington an imperial capital, which, in the fact, the whole idea was that it was not that it was a very different kind of place, that it was a simpler town with a kind of understatement to it. And understatement is not a word he particularly understands.
Hey, James, our guest is Paul Goldberger, a contributing editor to Vanity Fair, former architectural columnist for The New Yorker, widely considered the most knowledgeable and influential architecture critic in America. Couldn't be a better week to have him on.
What?
Paul, we are honored to have you on.
Oh,
For
I'm
years, you have not been a fan of Donald Trump's building. You once called them gaudy and banal. In his second term, he's much more into building and changing the landscape of Washington. What's your general assessment of what he's doing and how it's going to change the look of this town?
well. He's already begun to change it a lot. I hope it's not permanent. We thought for a little while it was just going to be the inside of the White House. Then all this other stuff started happening. I think he really wants to make Washington something. He wants to make Washington an imperial capital, which, in the fact, the whole idea was that it was not that it was a very different kind of place, that it was a simpler town with a kind of understatement to it. And understatement is not a word he particularly understands.
Oh, that's for sure. I was devastated with those pictures of the construction tearing down the facade of the East Front. I confess, I love the White House building, having nothing to do
Right.
with the occupant in it. The question, one of the first questions you ask, we'll get to the architecture in a minute. Why in the hell do we need a huge ballroom in the White House?
Well, you might want to rent it out for weddings and bar mitzvahs. I don't know, or Republican fundraisers. We don't. We've done fine without one. Um, I've been at dinners under the big tent in in the back of the White House. It's fine. Also, Washington has, there's that great hall in the National Building Museum where they've
Right.
sometimes had inaugural, which is actually one of the greatest rooms for a party anywhere in the United States. And it's a few blocks from the White House. So there's a lot of options in Washington. Uh, I remember once going to a dinner when Clinton was president, that was in the Benjamin Franklin rooms at the State Department, because it was winter. They couldn't really do a tent comfortably, and they wanted more people than could fit in the dining room. And it was great. It was fine. And it felt as every bit as presidential as
Yeah.
anything else would be. We don't need it. And
Yeah, and they keep the White House has put out all this stuff. Well, presidents have changed things from Teddy Roosevelt through Jacqueline Kennedy, but I don't ever. Yeah, I mean, obviously they built the West Wing at one
sure.
point, but
Right. Right.
for 100 years, I've never seen destruction like this for such a dubious purpose, and it
There,
just looks awful.
it looks awful. It's not, right. It's not a good, not good visuals. This
Yeah,
kind of thing. That's a big part of the problem, I think. But also, we've never done anything on this scale. Everything else we've done has also been with complete approval of consulting agencies. And Washington's the city where you generally, I've been involved as an advisor on a couple of memorial and monument projects over the years here. Well, it's a more complicated approvals procedure than you have in New York or other places. So the idea that you can just go right in and do this on the most historic building in the country is a little crazy. The
well,
Republicans have also been complaining a lot or trying to make comparisons, I should say, between this and Truman gutting the whole White House. But Truman gutting the whole White House was not a unilateral decision by the president who woke up one morning and said, I feel like gutting the White House. It was because the building was falling apart. Margaret Truman's piano famously fell down from the second floor and started breaking into the first floor because the ceiling was collapsing. The building was at that point really old. It had ancient mechanical systems. It was in desperate need of reconstruction. and renovation. So that was completely different. And also every single inch of that was not destroyed, but was saved, marked. What could be put back was put back. What wasn't became a historical artifact. It was done in a completely different way.
And nobody called it gaudy and banal, as they're
And
going to
nobody
call
called it
it.
gaudy and banal. That's true.
Paul, one
Word
more.
was
Go ahead.
mild. No, I just think gaudy and banal now seem, in light of what's going on now, to be kind of maybe a little too judicious, actually.
Let me ask you one more before
Yeah,
turning
yeah,
to James.
sure.
The Arc de Trump, the
Right.
planned arc over the Memorial Bridge. Talk
Mhm.
about that.
Well, all we've seen are a few little things. Uh, Looks a little weird and scary and imperial to me. I mean, it doesn't look. First, it's going to actually destroy the view of Arlington Cemetery from the Lincoln Memorial
Which
and
is a
from the north,
beautiful view.
which is a beautiful view. And in fact, the openness of it was a key point. We could have put something there ages ago. Could have put a million things there. In fact, the open space was part of the idea there, and the beauty. And in fact, also when you go up to uh, JFK's grave in Arlington, where that view was across Washington, this will now be in the foreground. You'll see this arch before you see the Lincoln Memorial. So that somehow, I have a feeling that the ghost of John F. Kennedy would not be thrilled by that.
Well, my wife drives over the Memorial Bridge every day because she works over at
Yeah,
WETA in Arlington, and she's often said that she wants to be buried or have her ashes or whatever,
right.
because she so loves that view. It's
Yeah.
an inspirational view, and he's going to wreck it.
It's actually one of the, if not the classic view of Washington.
Yeah.
And to sort of plump this thing in the middle that looks like, just a bad imitation of something that some emperor did 200 years ago is a little crazy, seems to me.
James.
Thank you, first of all, very honored to have you. Tell you and Al, the views of dead soldiers and graves is just a downer when you come to Washington. Why do you want to see Arlington? Let's put
Well,
it.
you don't really.
Yeah,
What you see is the beautiful hill, and you see the mansion, the old Custis Lee mansion up high with the columns, and you sense a kind of rolling hill, and then you see the graves collectively.
right.
And so it does remind you that people have died for this. In a way, it's like,
He doesn't like wounded soldiers. Why would he like dead soldiers?
that's true.
Right? He doesn't like caption.
No, the mystery is not why he would want this. That's all pretty clear. The mystery is why other people allow it to happen and let him get away with it. That's the mystery.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. It's November the 17th, 2028. You
Okay.
get a call, and the president-elect wants to see you in the transition office at 2:00 in the afternoon. You get on a train or a plane or whatever.
Right.
You go down and they usher you in, and the president-elect says, Ms. Goldberg, I'm really busy. I want you to come back in 2 weeks and give me a plan what to do about this abomination of something that he's built.
Right.
And I would like to restore Republican values to which is manifest itself traditionally in Washington architecture.
Yeah.
How would you go about this task? So
Okay.
you're
You
back
mean
2 weeks later, and you said, "What the hell I do? You got unlimited budget. I want to know what to do. What do you do?"
we're talking about Republican with a small r now, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Oh,
Yeah,
Republican.
okay.
Yep.
Well, I think you do different things in different cases. I think with if the ballroom really is built as it appears like it's going to be,
It will be.
yep. Well, then I kind of really do think that demolishing it is probably the right idea, because it's really is it's very destructive of what the White House stands for. It destroys, and it just sadly it looks tacky, badly designed, and it's destroying not just the symmetry of the White House, but the fundamental modesty that is inherent in democratic architecture, I think, which is not supposed to be about
Republican
overwhelming.
value.
You're right, exactly. So that one, I think you kind of restore the White House to something closer to what it was. The arch, I don't know. I got to wait till if it really does go ahead also. let's see how bad it is. Let's see how damaging it is. And I suppose it could be tweaked a little bit and maybe renamed as something else. I don't know. I mean, look, the idea of doing something to commemorate the 250th anniversary is not a terrible idea. I just think we could be doing something else.
I'm hardly an architecture critic, but one of the things that I always there's a certain permanence to architecture. Okay, building like not
Sure.
well, you can change shit around.
Yep.
I think that we should have we should retain something. Maybe it's that to remind people of what happened in this country. I don't think we want to erase the legacy of Donald Trump. I think that would be a terrible mistake. I think children and people from around the country, when they come to Washington in the year 2041,
Right.
there should be some architecture to remind us of how we lost our way.
I agree. I think that's actually really right and really perceptive. And I think that's why I'm not sure if both of these projects go ahead as it looks like they will, I would take down the arch necessarily. I think restoring the White House, maybe, but you're absolutely right. Look, it's the reason that it was never a good idea, and thankfully it didn't happen, to rebuild the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center as they'd been. You want some record of what happened. You want some record of some loss. And I agree, because look, architecture tells a story. It's not just about keeping us out of the rain. It also, it tells a story, and it's a way that generations speak to each other, really. And so you're totally right. We need some reminder, and you put it exactly right, of how we lost our way. Unfortunately, we got to find our way before we're ready to remember how we lost our way. But yes,
good point, Paul.
You're totally right, and you know, so yeah.
I just, as a man of editorial history, I never believe in denying history. I mean, I think some of the best stuff I've seen is in Berlin. I think the monument to the 6 million slain Jews, I said, this is never going to work. When I went there, it actually worked pretty goddamn good.
Yeah, totally right. You are totally right. Yeah, and in fact, look, part of the problem we're dealing with right now is the attempt to deny history of this administration right now. They're running around trying to deny history, and it doesn't work. And it ultimately is, history is going to come back and bite you in the ass anyway, one way or another. So, and you have a better chance of moving forward if you understand it. The idea that we're not willing to teach kids anymore about the evils of slavery is just it's beyond offensive.
I'm going to turn it back now. I have a quick question to us.
Yeah, sure.
I've lived here. I spent a lot of time here. What's your favorite building in Washington? Is it one that just kind of linger in front of it? Damn, they did a good job on that.
That's a great question. Oh shit, there's actually a lot of them. Although I will also say sometimes my favorite thing to do in Washington is just wander around Georgetown, just the totality of it, and walk around the streets more than any individual building. I love the National Gallery, both the new and the old parts, but the old part more, probably. The White House, of course, that's another reason I feel so upset to see it. It's not to see it so damaged by something that is, it's like putting an ocean liner next to a beautiful little sailboat. I mean, there's just no connection between the two at all, between what's being talked about now.
Well, my friend Charles Guggenheim did a documentary on the East Wing of the National Gallery.
Yes.
I said, my initial thing, I don't like this. What are they fucking what? They bring in, and actually, it kind of worked.
That's kind of work, yeah. No, he's a great filmmaker, actually. Yeah.
I want to, I take my kids, or took my kids, down to all the various museums in the mall. I love the Vietnam Memorial. I just think it works. And I must say, one of my great disappointments, because my dad fought in World War II, was going to the World War II Memorial. For some reason, my non-architectural expert eyes, that just doesn't work. Now tell me if I'm right or
Your
wrong.
non-architectural expert eyes are more expert than a lot of other people's because you're totally right. It doesn't work. And it has some of the problems that we're talking about with all the stuff that the administration is trying to do now. It's pompous. It's
Hmm.
pompous and kind of banal at the same time. It doesn't have many ideas behind it. It's just all about a kind of puffed up classical stuff. And the Vietnam Memorial is much more powerful by far. I mean, you go that it kind of tears your heart away. And there's nothing about the World War II memorial that does that. It kind of there's something about it that's just as if it's almost timid in a
Right.
weird way. I mean,
I
the boldness that this country represented, the power, I mean, the way. I mean, this is what's so heartbreaking about right now. After that war, the whole world thought we were the hope of the world. That's why why there was no question about whether the UN had to go in this country. I mean, we
right.
were the hope of the world. We were where it was all going to. And now to watch that stuff unravel often, due to events of our own making, it's heartbreaking and profoundly upsetting. But you're totally right. And um, it's well-meaning but kind of dull. The World War II.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't stir your heart the way so much else about what we did in World War II does stir your heart. And
No,
it's
you're so right, Paul. I have never been to the Vietnam Memorial where I didn't see some veteran or some
yes,
veteran's family down
yes,
there getting really emotional.
yes,
And I've never seen that. I've been to the World War II museum probably only 4
sure,
or 5 times, but
right.
it's hard to imagine. Did you get involved in the controversy over the Eisenhower memorial?
A little bit, yes, because I was in the middle of writing a biography of Frank Gehry, who designed it,
Yeah.
and so I was somewhat involved. And I actually did a piece about it, and uh, that was one controversy where actually I think ultimately the public was pretty well served because a lot of things about that memorial were changed in the design process. It got much better.
Mhm.
What was built is better than what he originally designed, thanks partly to the public, thanks partly to the the Eisenhower family that ultimately came around when he made certain changes. Uh, and it's actually quite good. The problem with the Eisenhower Memorial isn't the design, it's that the site is too big and the whole thing feels a little kind of like you're wandering in a football field, and it
Yeah.
should have been a little tighter and denser, and it would have had more power. But it's still okay. And the answer was to make it better, which is pretty much what happened, not to throw it away for something that would have looked like a miniature of the World War II memorial.
Yeah.
You know,
Paul, do you know any of the architects involved in the Trump and the Trump
no,
design? Who are they?
I
Does
do not.
anybody know?
Well, the ballroom is done by a firm called McCreary, which is a Washington-based firm. They've been around for a few years. They like to do traditional classical architecture, and they're very involved in this thing called the National Civic Art Society, which is run by a guy named Justin Shubo, who's an obsessive promoter of classical architecture, and he became well known because he actually led the campaign against the Eisenhower Memorial, which ultimately failed. It was built, although, as I said, it was built in a better version so that to some extent, the public airing was a good thing. And, but I don't know their other work. This is, look, there's nothing wrong with good traditional architecture. It's fine. But first, this isn't, I don't think, such a good piece of traditional architecture.
Yeah.
It's a kind of, it's a Marriott hotel piece of traditional architecture. It's not worthy of the White House. There's a different firm that's done the arch, though are people I've never heard of before.
Well, it's not any. I mean, it's a gaudy and banal.
Yeah, it's good even now. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. Everything does not have to be modern. You can do beautiful traditional things, but it's not. You don't just throw a bunch of classical columns on something and declare that your work is done. It's
Yeah.
actually a pretty complicated thing. Classical architecture it's a language. And in the same way that you can put words together in the English language and you can come out with Shakespeare if you're really good, or you can come out with bullshit. And so it's all about how skillful you are in arranging the words.
James, uh, I'll just make a comment about the Vietnam War. I'm a Vietnam era vet. I
Right.
served the Marine Corps during Vietnam. I never went to Vietnam, thank God. I went one time, and I'll never go back. The only time I would consider going back is if I live long enough and my grandson is kind of old enough that I can take him.
Right.
And I think it was really important that we got Vietnam right. And I'm not
Yeah.
so concerned that we got World War II wrong. And not that there wasn't more consequential or there was very brave and intrepid people, but Vietnam, we need to
Yes.
be reminded of Vietnam.
Yes, we do. You're totally right.
I broke down and I said, I'm never going back. I
Yep.
don't need to. I would reconsider if my grandson gets to be
Right.
like 7 or 8.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
want to ask you, Charles Guggenheim, my
Yes.
friend that did that, he had a theory that when you have unlimited materials, the architecture is crappy. Where you have limited, where you're just working with wood, or you're just working with one thing. That's why he was very down on Los Angeles.
Ah.
They could do anything they wanted, and it's
Right. Well,
some
he's
validity to that.
I think he's right. I wouldn't make it a question of materials. I would put it differently. I would say that ultimately you do better when you have some constraints. Okay. And the constraints can be materials, they can be function, they can be money, they can be time. But when nobody has ever done their best work, when a client says to them, spend whatever you want, do whatever you want, then you need architecture is basically solving a problem. So you need to know what the problem is and have the tools for it, and you don't throw every last thing at it. So yeah, I think he was right in his instinct when he said that. I just think it's actually a much bigger thing than just materials.
So this is something I've heard. I'm not an architectural critic, but I have had people tell me that Chicago is architecturally the best city in the United States. Would
It's
you agree?
it's the most. Best is a funny word. It's
I
an
don't know what to.
it's an incredibly exciting and important city because it's where American modern architecture was kind of born in a way.
Right.
And that was a really important thing. I mean, after the Chicago fire, they really drove right in and used the latest technology, but also a huge amount of creativity. And the skyscraper kind of came out of that, and a whole lot of other stuff. And it has pretty much, even though they've done a lot of crap too over the years, they've
Right.
done a lot of really good stuff. And it got embedded into the culture. The most popular tourist attraction in Chicago is the architectural tour they do on the Chicago River on a boat.
Yeah.
And that's the only city in America where like the biggest thing to do is the architecture tour. So yeah, there's a kind of architectural culture there that's really good. So yeah, he's right.
And
Yeah.
same news. Before I let you go, I got to ask you the pyramid at the Louvre. All right, I saw when it came first in Paris. I said, I'm not gonna like this. Okay,
Right.
this is bullshit. This doesn't fit in. I'm gonna hate it.
Right.
And I looked at it for 5 minutes. I kind of like it. It's real.
Well, you guys so far, you guys have been right on almost everything. So I'll stay with you. I agree with you. And actually, I made the same mistake you did. That was back when I was at the New York Times. I
Right.
wrote a column when the design was announced, saying I thought it was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Then it got built, and actually, it is good. IMP knew what he was doing in the end. He got the last laugh. And now it's a kind of almost a beloved landmark. I mean, that's another thing that's wrong with these classical people. They don't understand that a city's a heterogeneous, pluralistic mix of things. It's not one perfect thing where everything is the same. And it's like a society. And that's what makes cities actually interesting and alive. just like what
I
makes
just remember
society.
I knew I was gonna hate it, and
Yeah.
I just kinda walked around and I said to myself, "You know, I don't know if I'm supposed to hate it,
I
but."
love that story because no, I love it for a couple of reasons. I mean, first, because you're right, but second, because it was the building itself the thing itself won you over. It wasn't
Yeah.
that somebody argued with you or it said to you because of some principle you had to like it or some bullshit like that. You actually went there and the thing itself did it. And that's always the best thing, best way to like something. And so, but cities are a funny, complex mixture, and even Washington is
Well,
that, and
Paul, I cannot thank you
yeah.
enough. I have to get Al to close it out because
Okay.
I've run over the thing, but I hope I'll pass cross again.
I hope so too. I've always admired everything you've been doing, and I uh, I must be on probably some mailing list because I'm always getting highly personal emails from you
Oh,
asking me
mean every word of it.
to
He
give
ta-
to give me
Paul,
money.
Paul, Paul. He talks about you behind your back all the time.
Thank